Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on the specific requirements and queries about the Electronic Travel Authorization, also known as the ETA. I trust it will be very valuable for all. If you don't mind, we'll wait a few minutes to give everyone the chance to join the session before we start. So please feel free to stay around and we'll begin in 2 minutes' time. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's 10:32, so let's go ahead and begin. Good morning again to all of you. And on behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, I would like to give you a warm welcome to this morning's webinar about all you need to know about the ETA travel permit scheme. Before we proceed with the matter in question, I'd like to kindly remind that this session is being recorded so that we can share it with you later. And throughout the duration of the session, you can submit your questions via the Q&A function that you have below, and they will be answered by our guest speaker following this presentation. And now it's time to begin. As you may already be aware, from 2nd April 2025, most visitors to the UK will require an electronic travel authorization. Citizens of 86 countries are permitted to visit the UK for up to 6 months with only this authorization. We are very pleased to have Mr. Aaron Walton, ETA Engagement Lead from the UK Home Office, with us today. He will thoroughly explain how to obtain this authorization and I'll answer all your questions. The Home Office is the lead government department responsible for immigration and passports, drugs policy, crime, fire, counterterrorism, and policing. Its Future Borders and Immigration System program is introducing the electronic travel authorization to strengthen UK border security while ensuring legitimate travelers can continue to visit the country smoothly. Mr. Walton is the electronic travel authorization engagement lead within the UK Home Office's Future Borders and Immigration System, the FBIS program. He works directly with the stakeholders across the travel and tourism sectors to ensure clear communication and support during the rollout of this new scheme. So now, without further ado, I'll hand over to him. Welcome, Mr. Aaron Walton, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, and thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. So as mentioned, I'm here to talk about the UK's Electronic Travel Authorisation. I'm hoping most of you will be familiar with the concept, but over the course of sort of the next 30 minutes or so, I will kind of walk you through some of the basics of ETAs and take questions at the end. So before I sort of talk for the next 30 minutes, I actually have a video to show you. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's a video that just sort of broadly touches on what is an ETA. Don't worry if you don't capture everything, I will explain as we go along, but I thought it'd be good just to start this off with a bit of animation, just so you know what an ETA is.
UK travel requirements are changing. Except British and Irish citizens, everyone, including children, who enters or transits through the UK will soon require permission before they travel. This means if you were previously eligible to visit the UK without a visa, and are not already legally resident in the UK, you will need an Electronic Travel Authorisation, or ETA. Your stay must be shorter than 6 months and could include tourism or visiting family and friends, transit, business, and short-term study. If you want to come to the UK for other reasons, such as work or long-term study, you should apply for a visa instead. If you need an ETA, make sure you apply online before booking any travel to the UK. Once granted, it will be valid for multiple journeys over 2 years, or until the passport you applied with expires, whichever is sooner. When you check in for your journey, you may not be allowed to board without a valid ETA. As the ETA is digitally linked to your passport, you do not need to show a paper copy, but it may be helpful to print the confirmation email for your own records. While an ETA grants you permission to travel to the UK, it does not grant you entry. So you will still need to go through passport control at the border to enter the UK. Make sure you show the same passport you used to apply for your ETA, and that your passport is valid for the whole of your stay. For the latest information on how the changes will affect you, search Electronic Travel Authorisation on gov.uk.
So I hope you found that video useful. It will be available in a partner pack that will be disseminated by the organisers later, but I think it just provides a good overview of what the Electronic Travel Authorisation is. So I will touch on some of the basics of the video and just sort of expand on that as well. So essentially what an ETA is a digital permission to travel to or transit landside through the UK. I'll talk more about the transit requirements later on. The cost of the ETA is £16 per person, and it's valid for 2 years until the expiry date of the passport, whichever comes sooner, and it's valid for multiple trips during that period. Essentially, it's the permission that's required to get on the plane, train, or boat to come to the UK. Once you arrive in the UK, you go through the same process as you would do now. So if you're able to go through a e-gate, you'll continue to do so. If you go see an immigration officer, you'll continue to do that. So the ETA is an additional step. ETAs, for the most part, aren't actually checked by immigration officers. They are checked by your airline representative before you get on the plane. So again, if you don't have that permission when it's ready to get on the plane, you will not be able to board the plane or the boat or the train to come to the UK. So it's really something that you need to engage in before coming to the UK. In terms of applying for an ETA, you will need a machine readable passport. So that essentially means that that machine readable zone at the bottom of your biodata page where it's got your picture and your personal information, that zone at the bottom is the part of the passport that is required to apply for an ETA. I mention that because some people have passports that maybe don't have those, or may get an emergency travel document that doesn't have that machine readable zone. You need a passport with a machine readable zone to be able to apply for an ETA. If you have a passport or emergency travel document that does not have a machine readable zone, you would need to apply for a visit visa. The reason being is that part of ETA is this idea of a permission to travel. Everybody's going to need some sort of permission to come to the UK. So if you're unable to get an ETA, your next option is to apply for a visit visa that acts as your permission to travel to the UK. So I hope that makes sense. In terms of the why we are introducing this, it's primarily to strengthen the security of the UK border. We essentially just want to know more about people before they arrive in the UK. Right now, there are people who come to the UK that we don't know much about. They get to the border. We sometimes have to refuse them and send them home, which is a costly process. The ETA process allows us to do that information upstream. So essentially, while that person is still in their country of origin, where they live, and we can refuse them, therefore they're unable to get on the plane, the train, or the boat to come to the UK. Who it's essentially for is primarily for those nationals who ordinarily do not require a visit visa to come to the UK or do not hold an immigration status. But don't worry, I do have a list of those countries, and I can also expand on the who of it as well. In terms of the when, so as it was mentioned earlier, the ETA has been rolled out fully to all eligible nationals. So about 85 to 90, I can never remember the number. But we started the rollout back in sort of March 2023, and we rolled it out to the Gulf countries first. We then went to what we call the rest of the world, and then the last nationals within the rollout were the EU nationals, which was in April this year. And again, I will go into more detail a bit later on, but applications can be made via the UK ETA app or on the ETA application form on gov.uk for those who have access to a smartphone. Most people are getting their responses quite instantaneously. And when I say instantaneously, it can be less than a minute, but we would really and strongly advise that people apply for an ETA at least 3 working days in advance. Therefore, if there are any additional checks that need to be made, then a caseworker can do those checks within the 3 days, and you can get a decision with that time. My advice, and I will probably repeat this in this presentation, is to apply for an ETA as soon as you know you are serious about traveling to the UK. So once you've booked tickets, book a hotel, even if it's 3-4 months in advance, I would personally advise that you apply for your ETA there and then. So you can prepare, you can plan, and make sure that you've got your ETA before you travel to the UK. So as I mentioned before, we did it in a phase-by-phase rollout. So these are all the nationalities at present that require an ETA to come to the UK. So we have the Gulf Cooperation Council states that went live in October, February last year. January was the rest of the world. So that was countries in the Americas, Oceania, Africa, Asia. So countries like the USA, Taiwan, Japan, Mauritius, those were included in that block. And then the last block that we had was the EU EEA nationals, so Spanish nationals included. They went live from April 2025. So that has now concluded the rollout. So essentially, what that means is that all these nationalities on this page require an ETA to travel to the UK. If a nationality that you're thinking of is not listed on this page, it's because that nationality requires a visa to come to the UK. So again, just not to confuse people, it's just these nationalities on this page that require an ETA to come to the UK. So I'll talk more about who does and who does not require an ETA. So as I mentioned before, it's primarily aimed at these nationals who ordinarily do not require a visa to come to the UK. And it includes all ages. So that is whether you're young or you're old, everybody needs to apply for an ETA. The ETA is an individual product and everybody has to pay the same price, which is £16 per person. And the reason somebody will need an ETA are listed here, but it's sort of the general things that a tourist will come to the UK for. So tourism, visiting friends and family, business trips, studying as a visitor. So that might mean coming to the UK for 2 months to learn English or something. Also attending events. We have a route called the creative worker concession and the prepaid engagement. Anything that sits within our visitor rules, that person who is an eligible national, as shown on this page here, will require an ETA to come to the UK. So who does not require an ETA? So nationalities that ordinarily require a visa will still need a visa, but they don't need to get an ETA in addition to having a visa. So at the top of my head, Indian nationals require a visa to come to the UK. There is no need for an Indian national to get an ETA in addition to having the visa, as the visa acts as their permission to travel. It's also the same for those who live, work, or study in the UK or have the EU settlement scheme. If you live, work, or study, you will have some sort of residency here in the UK. Most people will have an e-visa now. You do not need to get an ETA in addition to having the e-visa because that acts as your permission to travel. And the same thing applies to those with the EU settled status. If you're a British or Irish passport holder, you do not require an ETA. And that's the same for those who are dual British and, let's say, Canadian citizens. If you possess both, you do not need an ETA. You will not be actually able to apply for an ETA because as a British national, one is not needed for you. In that case, we would strongly suggest that dual nationals carry both passports with them. So in that example of the British and the Canadian national, if they're flying out of Canada using their Canadian passport, that's more than fine. But when they are asked, when their Canadian passport will be scanned, they'll be asked for an ETA. Is at that point they will produce their British passport to evidence the fact that an ETA is not needed. Residents who are legally resident in Ireland who do not need a visa to travel to the UK will not need an ETA. I'm happy to expand on that if there are any questions on that. Also, those who are exempt from immigration control. So this primarily is military personnel, serving government ministers, and heads of state. They are exempt from immigration control and therefore exempt from the ETA requirement as well. Also, those who are British Overseas Territory citizens do not require an ETA. Those who are British nationals overseas do not require an ETA. And if you are transiting airside, you do not require an ETA. So you may remember me mentioning right at the beginning of this presentation about transiting landside and transiting airside. So if you are transiting landside, that is if you arrive in the UK and you need to go collect your luggage to check in for another flight, if you need to go through immigration, you will need to get an ETA. That's considering transiting landside, and therefore an ETA is required. However, if you are transiting airside, and this can only be done at Heathrow and Manchester airports, if you're transiting airside, which means you don't need to go through immigration because your luggage is going to your final destination, then you will not need an ETA as you are not passing through immigration. So again, transiting landside, going through immigration, you will need an ETA. Transiting airside, staying in departures, you will not need an ETA. If you're not quite sure whether you're transiting landside or airside, my advice and our advice would be to speak to your airline, who can best advise whether you'll be transiting landside or airside. The other thing we also wanted to mention to sort of support the why we are doing this is that we are not the only country that has a electronic travel authorization system. So as you can see on the left, there are many countries that have long-standing ETAs. So you have the US ESTA, Australia, Canada, New Zealand have an ETA, and we're also aware of other countries that have just started to implement them. So I personally went to Thailand a couple of months ago. I had to abide by their ETA system. So again, this feels very much the direction of travel that lots of countries are taking to border security. And you may also be aware that the EU is looking to launch their ETIAS scheme next year. So British nationals traveling into the EU will soon be required to comply with the ETIAS request as well. So again, this is very much as the direction of travel, why we're doing it, and that's why the UK wants to sort of follow suit, because it feels this is the right approach to border security. So before I show that video, I just want to say that that video that I'm about to show goes through the process of how to apply for an ETA. So the video I think is about 2 to 3 minutes long. Once it's done, I will sort of expand on the application process.
This video will show you how to apply
Sorry, I think I pressed the button.
for an Electronic Travel Authorisation, or ETA. To check whether you need an ETA, go to gov.uk/electronic travel authorisation. It is best to apply early, before booking your travel. If you cannot apply yourself, someone else can apply for you. The simplest way to apply is using the UK ETA app, which makes it easier to take pictures of yourself and your passport. To get started, visit gov.uk on your smartphone, or you can go directly to the UK ETA app on the Google Play Store and App Store. If you do not have a compatible smartphone or are applying for someone who is not physically with you, you can apply online on gov.uk instead. You will need the passport you will use to travel to the UK, your email address, and a credit or debit card. Alternatively, you can use Google Pay or Apple Pay. When you start your application, you'll be asked to take a picture of the photo page of your passport. Make sure all the details are clearly visible. If you are applying online, you can upload a photo of your passport. If you are using the app on a compatible smartphone and your passport has a biometric chip, the app will ask you to scan it. Place your phone on the front cover of your passport. You will hear a beep when the chip has been read. If you have any problems, you'll be asked to try again. If you keep seeing an error, you can skip this step. Next, you'll be asked to scan your face to confirm your identity. Hold the camera in front of your face and keep your face within the oval. Children aged 9 and under will not be asked to scan their face. You will then need to take a photo of yourself in the app. If applying online, you can upload one from your device. The photo must include your head and shoulders against a plain background, without shadows or objects behind you. Look directly at the camera, have a neutral expression, and keep your head straight. You must not have anything covering your face and eyes. Do not wear a head covering unless for religious or medical reasons. Finally, we will ask you a few questions. You will not need to give details of your travel plans. Complete your application by paying with your credit or debit card. You can also use Google Pay or Apple Pay. You will get an ETA reference number and an email to confirm you have applied. When we have made a decision, we will email you to confirm the outcome. We aim to have a decision with you within 3 working days. Your ETA will be digitally linked to the passport you applied with, so when travelling, you will only need to show your passport. We look forward to welcoming you to the UK. To find out more and apply for an ETA, go to gov.uk/electronic travel authorisation.
So just to expand on some of the points made in the video, so that video very much focuses on applying on the app. We would really recommend that people use the app to apply because it's a lot quicker, and you tend to get a response a lot quicker with the app. As it's shown on the app, you can scan the passport. Sometimes you might have to move the passport around to sort of detect the chip, but it's also very quick. There is also an online application for gov.uk. That can be used for people who don't have a smartphone per se or find it quite difficult to use the app, or if they're getting the help of somebody else. So you can actually support somebody else to apply for the ETA. If you're using the app, of course, that person needs to be in the room with you because as you saw, there is a liveness check that needs to happen. A live picture of somebody needs to be taken. So of course, that person needs to be in the room with you. However, if somebody isn't in the room, they are thousands of miles away and you want to help them with their application, you can use the gov.uk application form, upload a picture as it says, and continue the application on as well. The gov.uk option is also good if English isn't your first or your strongest language, as it gives you the ability to translate the material online, whereas the app at present is only available in English. Other things to also mention is that if you are a family of 5 or 6, there is no group application. There's no family ETA application you can make. So you will have to make 6 individual applications for your family members. But again, it does take it can take less than 5 minutes to do an application. So I'm sure by the 3rd or the 4th one, you'll be a professional at it and can get it done very quickly. As I mentioned before, we do advise people to apply for an ETA as soon as possible. However, people are getting their responses back within sort of a minute or so. But again, just to be safe, we would strongly recommend you apply as soon as you know you're traveling to the UK. The other thing to add is when you do apply, you'll get a confirmation email, and then you'll get another email that will confirm that your ETA is now granted. Once it has been granted, it's digitally linked to your passport, and therefore you can then travel to the UK. As it's a digital product, it primarily cannot be lost. However, if you lose your passport, you have to think that your ETA goes with that passport. So if you get a new passport, you will have to reapply for a new ETA. And yes, you will have to pay an additional £16 to get a new ETA. On the other side of this, you can actually be refused an ETA. There are many reasons that we can discuss if need be, but if you are refused an ETA, you will get a confirmation email confirming that refusal. And then the advice that it will give you is that you will need to apply for a visit visa. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Everybody requires some sort of permission to come to the UK. So if you are an ETA national, so if you're Spanish, you can of course apply for an ETA. If you are unable to get the ETA, your next port of call, your next option is to apply for a visit visa. Visit visas, the application process is much more lengthy, but it gives you more space to put information about yourself that will be considered by a caseworker who can then make a decision based on merit. So again, it can be granted, but it can also be refused. So I'm almost to the end. So essentially, I know this has been sort of a lot of information in this, and I'm happy to take questions afterwards, but there are support that is available for stakeholders such as yourself to learn more about the ETA. So one of the things that is highlighted here, and we will share afterwards, is our ETA partner pack. So the partner pack has things like fact sheets, digital assets, both of those videos that I've shown. It also has translated material as well. So the pack itself is actually available in Spanish, and we have created that pack really for it to be shared. So I will probably say it a couple more times, but we are really keen that people share this information as soon as possible. Other things that are available are ETA web chat. So as you are progressing with your application, if you are running into issues, so you want to ask a question, check something, there is a web chat that is available as well. And so I just want to check that is right. So, and then the last thing is how can you help? So really it is about communicating these changes to your staff, your stakeholders, your customers. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anybody who has an invested interest in this, because traveling to the UK is changing, and we want to make sure that as many people as possible are prepared for that change. Again, I'm not expecting you to remember everything that I've said today, but our partner pack is really a good source of material. It's made to be user friendly, so it contains drop and drag information, easy to follow instructions. It directs you to our gov.uk website, which I sort of have dubbed the single source of the truth. The reason being is that when anything changes, it's the first thing that will get updated. You can sign up for email updates as well if you choose. It's also the place where you can get instructions on how to download the app and also use the online gov.uk portal to apply for an ETA. We really want to push the gov.uk webpage because what we are aware is that many people have applied for an ETA, which is great, but they have been using third-party websites. So these are websites that your airline or your holiday destination may steer you towards to apply for an ETA. And we're aware that some people are paying the equivalent of £100 for what is a £16 ETA. So it's really important that people go to gov.uk to get the latest information, the right information, and of course are paying the right price for the ETA. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you found that useful. We do have time for questions. Our email address is at the bottom and we're happy to share that. It's etaengagement@homeoffice.gov.uk. Even after this, if you've got any questions or queries, please do come to us. We can answer most of the questions we get. So we're always happy to help. But I will stop there. I'll hand back, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolfen, for sharing all these essential aspects about the electronic travel authorization. As you mentioned, we will now have time and we'll open the floor to questions. So for all the attendees, feel free to send any questions or explanations, queries, comments to our Q&A function, and I'll be reading them out loud for Aaron to answer all the questions. I can just start dropping one of the questions for further exploring the topic of the residents in Ireland. So how would it work? So even if you are not an Irish citizen, if you are living, for example, if you are a Spanish citizen living in Ireland,
How would it
you
work?
then don't need to
Yes.
apply for
So in
an.
terms of the Irish residency, so remember that list of countries. So if you're any one of those nationalities that lives in Ireland, so again, using your example, if you are a Spanish citizen who is an Irish resident, so you live in Dublin, for instance, if you are traveling around the common travel area, so that's England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Ireland, Guernsey, Jersey, and one other place that I can never remember. If you're traveling around those areas, so if you're taking a trip from Dublin to Heathrow, for instance, you will not need an ETA as you are remaining in the common travel area, and that's fine. However, that same citizen, so that same Spanish citizen who is an Irish resident, if they are in Amsterdam and they take a flight from Amsterdam to Luton Airport to then catch a flight from Luton to Dublin, they will need an ETA for that flight from Amsterdam into London. So the exemption, and that's what it is, the exemption only applies for travel around the common travel area. If you are outside the common travel area, coming back in, you will need an ETA if you're transiting the
Okay.
UK.
Okay. In this case that you mentioned, I reckon it's only if your entrance is in landside,
Yes. So if
not in
you
airside.
Yeah, not airside. So I'm not quite sure how it works, but if at Luton, for instance, you can only do landside, so you would need an
Ah,
ETA.
okay.
But if you were at Heathrow, for instance, and you're able to do airside, then you wouldn't need an ETA. And of course, if your flight just goes straight from Amsterdam to Dublin and you don't need to transit at all, then you would be fine.
Okay, perfect. Then you said that the turnaround is usually quite quick,
Hmm.
so that you within 5 minutes you can have your authorization already. Um, if this is not the case, do you have any other scheme or system for emergencies?
So there isn't an emergency, so there's no way to sort of expedite the application process. Everybody has to go through the same process. There isn't a number you can call or an email address that you can contact. If you've done your ETA application and it doesn't come back in 5 minutes, it doesn't mean you need to worry. But again, we give that time of 3 days. So you have to think when you go into it, yes, it'd be nice that it comes back within 20 minutes. And again, most do. But if it takes longer than that, then you have to start thinking it might take up to 3 working days. So if you apply on a Saturday, it might take until the Wednesday before you get a response.
Thank you. And like thinking on extreme situations, would you apply for an ETA while you are already in the UK? Imagine, say, we know already, you've already explained that it would work for two years, unless you have to change your passport, your passport. But
Mm.
what would happen if you are already in the UK and at the time you are in the UK, it expires?
So
Would you
if it
need it?
expire, sorry, so if it expires whilst you're in the UK, that's fine. So
Okay.
what is required to do is to just get you to travel to the UK. So today's the 30th of September. If you traveled yesterday and your ETA expired today, but you still plan to stay in the UK for another week, that's fine because it was still valid at the moment you traveled to the UK. It doesn't need to be valid whilst you're in the UK. So when you leave the UK, nothing will happen. You'll leave as you usually do. But if you decide that you want to come back, of course, then you would need another ETA that is valid so you can travel to the UK.
Okay. And there's no period, like intermediate period you have to wait for.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Like imagine it expires today and I can apply just tomorrow, or I could have applied 3 days in advance in order for the new one to start on 1st
Yeah,
October.
so there is nothing that will stop you from doing that. So essentially, in that situation, and what we might find in the future is you might have an ETA now, and then you came to the UK yesterday, you've gone home. And then in a year and a half, you're thinking, okay, I want to go to the UK again. But you can't remember if your ETA is valid or not. You're not quite sure. What you can do is essentially apply for another ETA if you're not sure. That ETA will essentially reset, and then the new 2 years will start from the date that you applied for the new one and carry on that way. So you won't ever have two ETAs. One will just replace the other.
Okay, that's cool. Great to know, especially for business purposes, because this way, people who travel often to
Mm,
the UK, they can make sure they have it always up to date.
exactly.
So they can set a date regularly on their calendars every 2 years or every year and a half to say, okay, I have to update it in order for me to have peace of mind
Mm,
regarding the entrance in case they have emergency meetings or things like that.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. Great to know. And just out of curiosity, which are the ones that are exempt from the ETA, from immigration control? So it's presidents,
So
kings, I
it's yeah.
guess.
So
So
presidents, any heads of state, so presidents, kings, queens, that sort of thing. We also have diplomats, so people who are potentially based in the Spanish embassy here in the UK would be exempt. Military personnel are exempt. Serving government ministers are exempt. There's quite a list. But yeah, there's several groups of people who won't require an ETA at all.
okay, 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 perfect. Okay, so no more. Let's say I think I have another one. Is there a limit to how many times you can apply for an ETA while within a given period, or can you keep applying every 2 years, for example?
So
One
you
as
can
well.
keep applying every 2 years. As I said, if you've got an ETA, it's a year in and you're not quite sure if it's still valid, you can reapply. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. The other thing I will also say is some people who are refused an ETA may try and reapply again. The system won't stop you from doing that. However, you will, if you keep on applying, it will be £16 per time. And the system also actually does make a record if your ETA has been refused. So again, it's just considering that, but the system doesn't prevent you from making multiple applications. So in the first example, if you're just not quite sure whether your ETA is still valid after a year and a half, you can make another application, that's fine. In the second example, if you are trying to apply for an ETA and you've been refused and refused and refused, you can keep on trying to apply, but we would say probably after the first refusal, your best bet is to follow the instructions on your letter and apply for a visit visa.
Okay, yeah, so you'll get different information for like you'll say, well, you cannot apply for this one, you should apply through this
Yeah, so
bio.
it will say that your ETA has been refused. It may give you a short reason why your ETA has been refused, and then after that, it will say if you still would like to come to the UK, you will need to apply for a visit visa.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're
Well,
welcome.
this was the last question we have. So we are now bringing our event to a close. Thank you again, Mr. Walton, Mr. Aaron Walton, ETA engagement lead from the UK Home Office for this expert vision. And thank you all for attending. I hope you found it both interesting and useful. Later today, as we mentioned, you'll be receiving the recording of the session and a content pack in Spanish for you to share it on your websites if you have a dedicated space for the ETA or at any other promotional client material you have. You'll also be receiving Mr. Walton's contact email, well, the one that he shared just before at the final slide. And if you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach him directly. The Home Office will be more than happy to help you with this matter. From our side, just reminded you that this Thursday we are hosting a seminar on structuring financing transactions involving Spanish assets or sponsors. This will take place at the offices at the Spanish Chamber in collaboration with member law firm Sadal. And we have 2 more webinars next week. The first on Tuesday is about how to successfully position your brand in the UK market, and it's in collaboration with the marketing agency Quality of Spain. And on Thursday, 9th October, we will be joined by member Safe Computing for a webinar offering valuable insights into cybersecurity threats. You can sign up to any of these events through our website. We look forward to welcoming you again. Thank you very much again. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Walton. Thank you all the attendees, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a lovely day. Bye. Thank you.